tourists find giant object lying on beach, you won't believe what they found inside. This thing was not supposed to be here, that much was clear. Jimmy and Karen Peterson had encountered this giant beached object on a long hike. At first, they thought it might have been a whale of some sort, but they were quickly proven incorrect. And after a bit of further inspection, Jimmy actually finds a way into the object. Jimmy had finally made his way into the strange object. It was very dark, and looked to be mostly empty. But when he managed to turn on his small flashlight and illuminated the space, he suddenly realized that this was not the case. His wife Karen was still waiting outside, nervous as could be. Every minute that Jimmy did not come back out, she got more scared for his life. But then, Karen was completely shaken up by a loud scream coming from inside the object. She rushed to Jimmy's aid, hoping that she was not too late. The mysterious object in the distance had stood out to Jimmy and Karen right away. Even though it was miles from their location, they'd spotted it while approaching the water. Jimmy honestly couldn't think of who to call. They were out in a remote area, and there hadn't been many roads leading into the forest. It had taken them days of hiking to reach that point. Jimmy and Karen decided to get closer and find out as much as they could. The couple approached the object and could hardly believe the size of the object. It was so much bigger than they'd thought. Jimmy reached out and lightly touched it with his fingers, then gasped when he realized how wrong he had been. He'd originally suspected it was part of a dead whale that had washed up on the shore. Jimmy realized that whales weren't known to visit the area. He wasn't sure about their migration patterns. Even if it had been sick or injured, why would it have left the other whales? Plus, there was the issue of the texture. The object, however, felt completely different. It was clear that it wasn't a whale, but Jimmy had no idea what to make of the object's surface. When Jimmy knocked on the object, it sounded almost like it was hollow inside. Jimmy refused to leave, so Karen went farther away until she felt safe about the situation. She was worried that it might explode. Karen wanted to alert some kind of authority about the object and finish the rest of their hike. Some expert would know what to do. Jimmy couldn't just walk away without answers. He'd never seen anything like the object in his life. Karen had been dating Jimmy long enough that she trusted him to be smart. She compromised by giving him half an hour to check out the object while she took a break for some lunch. Jimmy walked around the object a few times while trying to figure out whether there was a clear opening. The part that looked like a mouth was closed, and there weren't any doors or holes. Since some of the route into the mountains had included steeper cliffs, Jimmy and Karen had both packed small climbing picks. He thought that maybe he could use the point to create an entrance into the object. Using both picks, Jimmy struck the side of the object over and over. It worked right away. He reached inside and felt nothing but open air. The thought that it was man-made still didn't take away from the fact that it was practically unbelievable. He couldn't believe what he was looking at. Jimmy just couldn't keep himself back. He had to find out even more about whatever this was, and he had to do it now. Inside the object, it was dark. The only light came from the hole that Jimmy had made. He quickly found that it seemed to be sectioned off inside. He had only gotten into a small room and was now faced with thin walls inside the object. Jimmy went into section after section, and all were as good as the rest. But none of them really spelled out what was going on. But then, he finally got to a wall that had a door built into it. The door was locked, but Jimmy knew that the answers he was looking for had to be behind it. Karen suddenly heard a muffled scream coming from inside the object. That had to be Jimmy. She was too terrified to do anything. In a wave of panic and uncertainty, Karen called the authorities to report what she and Jimmy had found and that they needed to come now to help Jimmy, who might be in trouble. A police and trauma helicopter arrived just 15 minutes later, and there was still no sign of Jimmy. The authorities weren't about to go in through the hole he had created and try to track him down. They used power tools to break open the outside of the object, and when they finally got through, they found Jimmy inside, a bit shaken up, but in good health. But now, the big question remained. What had he found inside the object, and why was he screaming? Jimmy had found that this fake whale was actually a movie prop from a movie that was recorded in the icelands nearby. The walls inside the object were used to make it sturdy and keep the air inside to keep it floating, and behind the door in the front was a lot of machinery. That was apparently used to move the head of the fake whale around to make it as realistic as possible. Jimmy and Karen were eventually taken back to civilization by the helicopters. The movie company that owned the fake whale was contacted and revealed that it had floated away one night and they could not find it anymore. They promised to come and pick it up. There wasn't anything else to worry about because the whale was going back where it belonged.